My name's Tony Belmonte. I'm a fifth grade teacher. I've been teaching for 22 years now. And my daughter, Grace, was born in 2003. She just turned 18. And we spent 4 long months here in the NICU. She was born here with supposedly no complications. And she was born at 36 weeks, so just over that premature mark, but she was only 4 pounds, 7 ounces. She kind of immediately went into pulmonary distress within the first 4 hours. At the time, I was only 28 years old, ended up, first baby, new baby situation, ended up being brought down to the NICU, and we spent 4 months down there. She spent 16 days on ECMO, which is a heart-lung bypass machine, and then spent, after those 16 days, spent a lot of time on the ventilators, weaning off of that, and then finally 4 months later, we're able to go home. I mean, I would say that my parenthood started out with a huge amount of trauma. I mean, like I said, I think I was 28 years old, first child, went in, everything was kind of routine all through my wife's pregnancy. All the check-ins were fine. Everything was pointing to a regular, healthy, normal birth. And then things spiraled very quickly. So, the trauma involved was, you literally, it's almost like slamming on a gas pedal. All of a sudden, your baby's born, everything's happy, you're holding your baby, everything seems normal. And then we were in the recovery room for about 4 hours. As soon as we got to the newborn nursery, that's when things started, escalating very quickly. My wife and I, we did 2 things. One, we started a Caring Bridge website because so many people were calling and asking, updates on how Grace was doing. And the Caring Bridge website was great because it was almost like an online journal that you were able to keep. And we ended up printing it all out. We still have it today. And it was one of those things that every day, it was mostly my wife, it was me a little bit, but it was literally just kind of a journal, just kind of going through what went on during the day. How did Grace react to this? Was it a good day? Was it a bad day? I know for myself, instead of doing it online, I did it written, actually writing out a journal. And that just helped me kind of identify feelings. What was I going through at the time? Really kind of not departmentalizing, but focusing in on like a specific feeling of like, well, what was this like today? I know that there was one time where Grace crashed. She had a really bad day and she crashed and her SATs crashed. And I remember being in the room and it was such a traumatic event. And I mean, after everything stabilized, the doctors and nurses are all like, okay, everything's fine. But you're like, no, that wasn't fine. That was pretty traumatic. So I know going home and just journaling through that and writing through what that felt like being in the room, it was, and both my wife and I had very different experiences, like while that was happening. I know that for my wife, it was way more traumatic while it was happening. She was very freaked out when Grace crashed and when the doctors were all swarming around. So she wrote kind of extensively about that, what that felt like. When the crash first happened with Grace, I was okay then. It was afterwards. It was almost like, that post-traumatic stress that kind of really overtook me. So I wrote a lot about that, about what that felt like, about, what it felt like just to be completely out of control in a situation. And, obviously not being a doctor, and this is your child, not being able to intervene yourself, you're really kind of at the mercy of what's going on around you. You're just kind of standing back and watching. It helped me explore my emotions in the moment. And then it really helped looking back too, because you read your writing and you look back and, in a way it's kind of almost like a success story. Like you see like how you moved away from this very traumatic time and how that there are good times. And, throughout Grace's 18 years, there's been up and downs, medically. And I do think that it does help to look back at those times and see how you went through it, how you've grown from it. It helps me process through the emotions at the time when you're actually writing. So I do think that you're kind of processing through how you felt at the time. Even something as strange as, the lights in the NICU, like even like describing that, the lights, it's very artificial. There's no windows in there. You feel very closed off. And even just kind of processing that feeling of what it was like, it is helpful. But then it's also a way when you look back, it's also a learning experience too, because when you look back at your writing, you're looking through it through a lens of not being emotionally right there in the time. So you're able to look back, that you've made it through this time, but you're also, you learn and you process the information a little differently.